think the lack of accountability for the Republican Party is a broad societal problem, even beyond, and maybe it's because you have people like Joe Biden going out there. It's like, as soon as Donald Trump is gone, these guys are going to be back on board with the whole sort of like, I mean, no one believes that. And but I think the press, I had a story at the beginning of the week of like, the Republicans' response to impeachment is the final nail in the coffin for the Trumpification of the Republican Party. And they have it backwards. Donald Trump was not dropped from the heavens by aliens who were saying, we're going to impose our chosen candidate on the Republican Party. They built this, and he just showed up because he was the right size for the suit, and that was it.
Exactly. I mean, I think you have people who really, on all sides, both the Democratic and Republican side, who have an interest in just placing Trump in this ideological and historical bubble. Like they want to pretend like there's no precursor to Trump, like he came out of nowhere, and that there's no modern context for him either. Forget the whole geopolitical context of the rise of neo-fascism and the rise of strongman leaders in Europe and and in Southeast Asia and in Asia, but just in America, the long history of fascist leaders and authoritarianism, and just the idea that we never really reflected on what are contributing factors to the rise of these movements that actually, I kind of like Pete off there, but we haven't really reflected on what our system is doing that appeals to these people. Right. You can even talk about the Stephen Miller situation, which I brought up on my own show recently, The Discourse.
Subscribe to it on Patreon.
Subscribe to it on Patreon at expandediscourse.com. No,
I am a patron of it.
You should. Everyone should be a patron of it. I won't eat weird things like Michael does, but I have a diet to maintain. But
that was the last one.
You say that, but in reality, it feels as though you're like the Stephen Miller situation. Like when it came out that he was an avowed, explicit white nationalist, someone like Steve Bannon who was in conversation with the ideology of white nationalism, people rushed to talk about whether they were shocked or not shocked. When I felt like and some people were engaged in that conversation, but then some people were like, hey, the fact that Stephen Miller is an avowed white nationalist and that we have a Muslim ban and that we have 700,000 people in camps at the border, that's not a coincidence, right?
Of course,
but it's like it's not a coincidence, but like the implication there is not a direct causal relationship either. It's like there's an intermediate variable there that he was able to get into government. He was able to fill this role because we already had the infrastructure built that was so appealing. He
was working for Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't like this guy was pulled off.
He also had ICE and he had the Department of Homeland Security.
Right, but I'm saying
he had the Patriot Act.
Right.
Yeah. All of it.
Well, it's interesting that you say that nobody wants to think about or take a look at the conditions that gave rise to Trump, because I have heard a number of the Democratic primary candidates mouthing that and paying lip service to it lately. I feel like even Amy Klobuchar might have said it at one point in time, but then the reasons they give just betray their utter ignorance and shallowness of their understanding of this stuff. And in a way, it like inoculates them from having to take a real look at it.
Buttigieg does that stuff all the time where he will faint at what needs to be done. Like Trump is a symptom. He'll say things like that. And then,
because then
he'll say the cause is, of course, the deficit.
Well, and I think, but it's become the thinking person's thing to say in the last several months. Now that's like the new, but I think it's an interesting distinction though to draw. Like, I watched more of the Hillary Clinton interview on Howard Stern, and I won't belabor what I said yesterday, but she told a story she confirmed a story that's already been floating around, which is that she was sitting next to George W. Bush during the inauguration speech where Trump talked about carnage.
This is some weird,
and Bush looked at her and went, "That's some weird shit." And and it's so, but I completely understand why people find that story so comforting and appealing. And I think that there is, like, when you think about people like Joe Biden and still so many people in Washington, it's like, yes, partially they're delusional about the extremism of Republicans and the depths they're willing to go. There's no doubt. But on the other hand, I have no doubt that there's still tens of thousands of private conversations going on where it's like, we get that this guy's a little bit uncouth. If he goes, we will chill out a little bit on the rhetoric. And guess what we can do then? cut Medicare, Social Security,
Right.
and get back to doling out consulting contracts.
Right.
I think that corrupt bipartisan consensus still totally exists, even in the context with the rise. It's like there's three. There's Republicans as an authoritarian party, the bipartisan corruption axis, and then with Sanders and the squad, some actual sharpening ideological.
Let me just add to what Hillary Clinton could have said that would have sort of illuminated this. Her lack of saying it illuminates this problem.
Right.
He says that's some weird shit. And she looks at him and goes, let's hope he doesn't cause the death of 1 million people for a war of choice that we legalize the country into.
Well, part of the reason she can't say that is because she voted for it.
Well, exactly.
And her
but,
husband,
I mean, she could have whispered it. She could have whispered it, and he could have said, like, but you voted for it. Well, I did, but it was,
her husband went to the UK
I understand.
and said, you guys should listen to Tony Blair.
But my point being, that is the response that would be given
Right.
if they weren't like, look, that was just rhetoric. It's the stuff that he does that we should really judge him on. All bad, but let's be honest, George. You immiserated 1 million.
But
people.
we all know in the Clinton-Bush game, all they care about is the rhetoric, and then they get to the consulting contracts.
I mean, just to touch on Biden's delusional mentality about being able to cross aisles with the Republicans and to work with them towards a better future or whatever. I mean, the question for him whenever he says that should be, well, what do you know that Obama doesn't? Right? That should be the question.
Yes.
Because frankly, it's like
I can't tell you how many times I have asked people working with candidates to ask him that question, reporters to ask that question. Yes.
He knows how to be white.
I mean, yeah, but to admit that is to admit that that you feel like we have to break bread with people who are so virulently racist that they could not work with the first black president. So you can't really say that. But any candidate who expresses, within the Democratic Party, which still fetishizes Obama, they still fetishize him as the great communicator, like they're probably best president in the past 30, 40 years, right? That for all his faults, regardless of why he did it, he bent over backwards to commiserate with Republicans. He bent over backwards to find common ground. He was willing to do whatever they wanted to
Social Security.
And they refused to do it. So for a party that is so concerned with finding the next Obama, right? The question for everyone who's talking about this bipartisan appeal they can sort of manage or cobble together once Trump is out of office, they should be forced to say, okay, well, what makes you better than Obama?
Exactly.
Like what do you know that Obama does not know?
From that perspective, Sanders treats Biden the most respectfully.
Specifically Joe Biden,
because he's the one who's been making this claim, and he was there. Like, you and him couldn't do this before, and you walked across the Pennsylvania Avenue to give Mitch McConnell whatever he wanted when it came time for the fiscal cliff. I mean, you still weren't able to do it. Let's play this. I know Michael played it yesterday. I wanted to play a clip of Michael talking about how great of an ad it is, because this ad is not good.
Are you serious?
Yes,
Jesus,
but we didn't have.
Wow.
No,
the first half of the ad is objectively good.
I think the ad is bad, and I will tell you why. Now, I think it's.
Okay.
I think it's.
Let me do this for you. I think the ad is good. Pause it. All right, go ahead.
The reason why this ad is bad is basically something that Brandon had said before, which was that the Republican Party is completely and wholly built around aggrievement. And this ad, I think Donald Trump could take this ad and with just a couple of different tweaks, use it for himself.
Bad general election ad, great Democratic primary ad.
Very possibly.
Oh, yeah.
Very possibly.
And we are
okay.
currently
I didn't
in
know.
the
No.
primary.
I think what I said actually is that I think in the general, if you cut the second half of this out and just made it about him looking like a boob, that maybe because they respond to like being emasculated, but the violin part, not good general election.
The Republicans don't care about what Europeans think, and they certainly
It even goes further than that.
Canadians.
They are almost knee jerk
Yeah.
their response is opposite.
This is like Trump dunking on them, basically.
Right.
I mean, they like that. I mean, if you look at it,
It looks like a cuck, though.
That's the good part about it. Like, it definitely
he looks like a
it will
cuck.
make Trump upset.
Yes, that's the point.
But that doesn't necessarily translate to like electoral failure.
Believe
No,
me,
well, here's the
Democratic
thing.
primary voters, there's
I think
a
there's
section
some.
that are
I
gonna
think there's
eat
some
this up.
truth to that. I think that's it's possible that, and I think frankly there's people who are saying the same thing about Biden going after that guy yesterday.
Oh, I said the same thing. I think
People like Joe Biden because they think he's a tough guy and he's going to bully the bully. He's going to beat up Trump.
Oh, I think the guy yesterday works well in the general election. I do. I do.
On the aggrievement tip, like Trump is going to do that no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter how much or how little ammunition the Democrats give him. If Kathy Griffin does a mean tweet about him, he's going to act like he's being crucified.
Well, yeah, but that's my point, is that they need at least just some. This just feeds in that, just becomes chum for that aggrievement.
Like, they've got
tour.
no shortage of chum, though. It's
But
not
it's
like they
better-
were waiting for it to come along when this ad was made.
It's better, dude, you look like an idiot as a play versus how dare you, sir.
I personally think that for the general election, the key is you need to motivate a marginal part of your base to get them to come out, and you need to depress as much of the other side as you can. And the one thing I think that is going to depress the other side is, frankly, attacking the Republican Party. Because if the Republican Party is attacked as Donald Trump just wasn't up to the task because the Republicans are so bad, they never gave the health care that they promised. They never got rid of the Affordable Care Act. They never built the wall that they said they were going to do. And the idea being that, like, it's useless, Trump voters, and even your superhero couldn't get the Republican Party to do anything, so why bother? I think is the only tack to take with them. This stuff, it really is just this is just to get the MSNBC viewers out to vote for Biden. Yep.
World leaders caught on camera laughing about President Trump. Several world leaders.
Hell, that French guy.
Trump.
They're laughing at
Look at
him.
there from Europe.
Administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country.
They added that laughter. They added that laughter.
Leaders mocking and ridiculing him for being
that one's
completely
good. That looks
off
effeminate.
balance.
Allies are deeply worried about him. They say he's becoming increasingly
sad.
isolated.
Oh,
Something is very
For me, it's
wrong.
Look how mean they're being to him.
For me, it's good because I know he saw it. I know Trump watched it.
Right.
I know it upset him personally.
Yes,
and
of
when
course.
it's always funny to hurt Trump's
I
feelings.
like how they have his face pockmarked in that last clip.
But to be really clear,
they're showing like some pockmarks on
the
his
second
face.
part,
Ew.
violin, not general election material.
Well, of course,
but
because you don't-
your MSNBC material.
Well, but that's the thing. It's like people going like
Your-
Wolf Blitzer, Brian Williams. Help, F those
Brian
guys.
Stelter said something bad about Trump. Uh-oh.
Right, exactly.
Well, what they're trying to do here and what they need to do, I think, is to unite the traditional base of the Democratic Party that votes in a primary, which includes both kind of urbane, white, professional, managerial liberals and black voters in the South. And I mean, I'm not a total wonk on this, but as far as I understand it, those two segments of the base have not united behind a single candidate yet, which might create an opening for a candidate like Bernie to come in and win.
Well, I will say, if you want to unite black voters behind you, maybe appearing with the person multiple times. Like this video ad really centers Justin Trudeau, who, maybe like cool it with that one for a few months. Like, I found it funny. Like, I found it a little funny, but it's just not.
I almost forgot about that.
How? I mean,
this ad is Jack Ryan meets Rachel Maddow. Like, this is a good Democratic primary
And I'd
ad.
be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
I just don't see
You're gonna get to that.
these like smarty pants PMC liberals uniting behind someone who's so obviously embarrassing.
Oh my
that
God.
Joe Biden is embarrassing?
Yeah.
They're both
His brain is
embarrassing.
melting in real time. And he sniffs the hair like the Hillary people don't like him.
Jody Biden.
The finger suck was weird.
The finger suck was fine.
That was the least weird thing. I'd give that one a pass.
Yeah, I would say.
I just saw the image. I didn't see the video.
Here is, a lot of people are arguing that Joe Biden is getting testy as a function of his old age.
Trump and Biden have the questions in the bottom of Jell-O cups.
Here is Biden at in '88 when he's running, and I mean, on some level, there is an argument, I guess. How do you beat Donald Trump? You get another guy who's like Donald Trump. And this is like sort of the most Trumpish clip of Joe Biden. He's a little more adept, although, to be fair, this was also 30 some odd years ago. So, he may be a little bit sharper then.
He is self-made.
I definitely want some of those vitamins where your hair gets thicker 30 years later than it was at the time, but that's we'll put that aside. But here he is. He is up in I think this is up in New Hampshire.
This is New Hampshire.
And he is part of the 1988 Democratic tour. I remember watching C-SPAN back then, actually, during this.
Did you watch this photos?
I don't know if I watched this when it happened, but I remember Songus when he went swimming. And,
that's 92.
Was that 92? Oh, okay, then I guess it wasn't 88.
Who did you back in 88? Please say Jesse Jackson. Just pretend.
I honestly don't even remember 88 now.
Okay.
Good.
Question. What law school did you attend, and where did you place in that class? And the other question is, could you quickly, I think
I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship.
Pause it for 1 second.
Now, an asshole.
Well, understand, the question was asked because people were still talking about how Ronald Reagan had no standing to be president at that time. Go ahead.
Quickly, I think
I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. In the first year in law school, I decided I didn't want to be in law school and ended up in the bottom 2/3 of my class, and then decided I wanted to stay, went back to law school, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I won the International Moot Court competition. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only need 123 credits, and I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
If I could say one thing, I think just in my own, I'm not questioning your IQ at all. I'm just saying that with the people...
Pause it for 1 second. Now, in 1988, Biden was in his 40s, I guess. Late 40s would be my guess, right?
Really an unfortunate
and
line.
I got to tell you, it's more or less my age. The idea that I can remember how many credits I had in college at this point.
I don't know,
He's
man.
showing
I've
his
seen you,
inner
Sam.
Buttigieg.
I don't know.
One
time Sam was on the phone with Dane. He was just like, I would suspect I have a higher IQ than you. I have 365 credits.
This is somebody who is like, the fact that rolled off his tongue so quickly is very weird to me, I think.
Well, I think it's made up, but this is in the context of...
You mean that you think that was set up?
I don't think... No. I don't think Biden...
He has it rehearsed because it's a lie.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Fabrications.
But I do think that in What It Takes about 88 campaign, I mean, they said that Biden had, even though he became a senator when he was 30, was basically... had a lot of embarrassment because he's a Delaware and Syracuse grad and not an Ivy Leaguer. And
both of the people involved in that are pretty revolting.
I mean, the questioner is a total schmuck.
A-hole, yeah.
Total schmuck.
I don't know. I think they should circulate that ad to all the PMC liberals who like Warren and Buttigieg right now. Maybe they would throw some support to Biden.
Here is Biden responding to a climate activist.
Another one?
This is, I don't know, did we play this one?
No,
this is the third one.
This is another one.
There are so many of these.
And it is unbelievable. What I think is problematic, and it's going to be interesting to see if this narrative holds. In some respects, Biden comes off as a tough guy yesterday. In other respects, there is still the narrative that Joe Biden can't address difficult, even remotely difficult questions. In fact, it doesn't appear that he can answer any questions. And if the idea that he can't that he can't respond to anything that is even like vaguely challenging. Like this stuff is obvious that, you know, the Hunter Biden question is about as obvious a question as you would expect to get. Like
it's going to come up.
The day this thing broke, there should have been 12 people around a table and they should have gone through every single sentence and word that he was going to say and respond to this at every stop and every time.
Did.
I don't know if they did. I don't know if they did. I think he's too arrogant, actually, and he thinks like, I got it. And here's another example of this. Watch this.
I'm Aaron. And what I'm wondering is, how can young folks trust that you're going to fight for us on climate change when your climate advisor, your hand-picked climate advisor, served on the board of a fossil fuel company?
That is not the person who's doing my advising. And by the way, yeah, Heather worked for us in the administration.
No, I know.
Okay? But she's look at my record.
Yeah.
Look at my record. Just look at the record.
I have President Biden, Vice President Biden.
Well, I tell you what, if you look at my record and you still doubt about my commitment, then you should vote for somebody else.
I've looked at your climate plan. Why doesn't it ban fracking?
Well, why doesn't ban fracking? Because you can't ban fracking right now. You got to transition away from it. Look, you're going to ban fracking all across America right now, right?
I would love to.
Yeah, I'd love to too. I'd love to make sure we can't use any oil or gas, period, now. Is it possible?
Yes.
Well, you ought to vote for somebody else.
There you go.
I like the strategy. I want to see how it plays out.
Yeah, exactly.
long term.
How many times can I say that to somebody?
He's going to say it to every American.
Yeah.
Kind of trying the Trump thing on Democrats right now. Because, like, they love to be topped by Trump. He's their daddy. He's the only one who can get away with insulting his own base. Biden, I don't know if that's going to work on Democratic primary voters.
I don't want anybody to grab me by the shoulders like that ever in my life.
Super creepy.
It's a little weird, but from my perspective, it looks like Biden has an underlying personality flaw of being incredibly insecure and getting incredibly aggressive when he's confronted, which goes back to the 80s, obviously, which is now being exacerbated by, senescence, essentially, right? So, like, he's getting frustrated when asked questions and going towards his normal behavior, like, I'm going to be very aggressive, but, like, it's just not there anymore. Like, it's hard to watch sometimes, actually. It's a little bit sad.
That is how men traditionally behave, though, when confronted. Like, that's a component of, like, classic masculinity that may not read as negative to a lot of people.
I think there's a possibility with that as well, frankly. All right, well, look, we're going to take a break.